Vita Sackville-West was born in 1892 into immense wealth. She grew up to be a successful novelist, poet, and journalist, but despite Vita's artistic success, her unconventional life meant she was in a constant battle with her family's legacy. Virginia Woolf, born 1882, was an English writer, considered one of the most important modernist writers of the 20th century, and a pioneer for her use of the stream of consciousness as a narrative method. 14th of December, 1922. A dinner party hosted by Clive Bell set the stage for Woolf and West to meet for the first time, and soon after, the two's ill-fated romance that would eventually inspire Woolf's novel Orlando had begun. 71 years later, Dame Eileen Atkins' play titled Vita and Virginia opened on the 10th of October 1993 at the Ambassador's Theatre in London. The play was primarily a dramatisation of the letters the two sent to each other, written just as beautifully, if not more so, than their novels. Atkins has regularly returned to the life and work of Virginia Woolf for professional inspiration. She has played the writer on stage in Patrick Garland's adaptation of A Room of One's Own, and also in her original play Vita and Virginia. Several years later, Atkins got to work trying to adapt their story for the big screen, the first draft of which was finished by 2014 at the latest. The film starts hard with a famous talk Vita Sackville-West made on the radio alongside her husband, where they discuss femininity, creativity, and the role of women in society at the time.
I enjoy the qualities in myself that may be said to be masculine.
And so do I, darling.
We get to see this beautiful title card by Lip Sync Design. Her mother, played by the great Isabella Rossellini, who, fun fact, is the daughter of Swedish actress Ingrid Bergman.
He's looking at you, kid.
Scolds her not only for the radio broadcast, but also her latest book, which is yet to be published, which charts the relationship she shared with Violet Trefusis.
It's a thinly disguised account of your ludicrous affair,
which Lady Sackville convinces Vita to have withdrawn from print. Vita famously dressed as a man and ran off with Violet Trefusis, the first of many well-known affairs she had throughout her lifetime. It's that cold night in December that Vita visits Clive Bell's party, where she not only meets the members of the Bloomsbury Group, but Virginia Woolf. At the time, West was far better known than Woolf, with her books selling far better than Virginia's, something Woolf saw as a shortcoming on her own part. Nowadays, however, Vita is known more for her gardening than her writing.
Why do you think your books sell more than mine?
Popularity was never a sign of genius.
Exactly. That's, why this video has like 10 views. Actress Eva Green was originally cast in the role of Woolf, but had to drop out due to scheduling conflicts. And while I do think that Green is a wonderful talent, I am a massive fan of Elizabeth Debicki. She is brilliant in everything, whether it's The Night Manager, The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Guardians of the Galaxy, or Tenet. We don't talk about Peter Rabbit.
Yeah, but coming from the oldest, it just kind of means more.
Vita is enraptured by the author throughout the rest of the night, and the next morning writes her first letter addressed to Woolf. It's a basic affair, professing her admiration of her work and mind, and a desire to meet again in the near future. Virginia's reply is rather cold and distant, including an offer to publish her next novel at the Hogarth Press, a book printing company founded by Virginia and her husband, Leonard Woolf. They meet for the second time at said company, where Virginia is haunted by visions of vines as Vita leaves for abroad after rejecting her invite to join her. It's at this point that their writing becomes more frequent, sharing their experiences of the world and life from two very different places and perspectives across the globe. Vita and Virginia's letters are presented to us primarily through these close-up shots, often staring directly into the audience as if we are the object of their affection.
That kind of direct-to-camera approach gives you a feeling of what it might be like to be seduced by Virginia Woolf or Vita Sackville-West or either of these two ladies.
It's an effective tool, but is a little overused throughout the film. The letters themselves are beautiful. You can find them easily online to read yourself, or you can always listen to one of the many audio recordings if that's your jam.
I just miss you. In a quite simple, desperate human way.
Upon returning to London, Virginia rebuffs Vita's want to dedicate her latest book to her, unaware that comments Vita had made had hurt Virginia deeply.
You must remember that Virginia is vulnerable,
under all their brilliance.
And at Kew Gardens a short while later, Vita explains not only her viewpoint, but also exactly how I feel after reading every one of Virginia Woolf's novels.
When I read your work, I don't know whether to be dejected or encouraged.
These beautiful gardens are, of course, a well-known locale in London, and was a place where Virginia Woolf made regular visits, eventually creating a short story of the experiences she'd observed during her time there. Vita shares her thoughts on Virginia's newest novel, Mrs. Dalloway, along with the rest of the Bloomsbury group. Virginia Woolf, John Maynard Keyes, E.M. Forster, and Lytton Strachey were some of the key members of this collective. Their works and outlook deeply influenced literature, aesthetics, criticism, and economics at the time, as well as modern attitudes towards feminism, pacifism, and sexuality. A well-known quote attributed to Dorothy Parker is, "They lived in squares, painted in circles, and loved in triangles." After accepting an invitation to Vita's ancestral home of Sissinghurst Castle in Kent, she meets with Lady Sackville, who makes her dislike of their relationship clear, knowing what her daughter's intentions are. In their garden, Vita and her husband Harold Nicholson discuss her multitude of conquests at length.
Jeffrey?
That was never anything much, and he's quite happily gone back to his tiresome wife.
Dorothy?
I haven't seen her.
Your maid, the French one. What was she called?
Janu, no.
Before she tentatively agrees to follow the diplomat to Tehran. It's important to note as we go that while Vita and Virginia's blossoming love may feel cruel to their respective husbands, that these were very progressive people. Harold was no stranger to infidelity. He had affairs with Lord Curzon, and he was involved in a long-term relationship with Raymond Mortimer. Nicholson and Vita discussed their shared homosexual tendencies frankly with each other, and they remained happy together for the rest of their lives. Virginia rejects Vita's request to join her abroad once again, which sends her into a spiral of depression at the missed opportunities and presence of Vita. Throughout the film, Virginia deals with hallucinations and issues speaking, which serve as visual representations of her struggles with her mental health. Eventually, she lost that battle and committed suicide on the 28th of March, 1941. After a particularly nasty incident involving imaginary birds, Virginia is put on house arrest for a while.
What fools would we be to deny women a voice, lest they laugh at us?
Leonard Woolf remained faithful to Virginia until her death. Leonard provides the framework in her life for Virginia to work as a writer and as a woman. Virginia Woolf once wrote that a woman must have money and a room of her own if she is to write fiction. Leonard provided not only that, but also a loving presence in her life. Having heard of her troubles, Vita leaves, with disapproval from Harold, to try and improve Virginia's state of mind. Many years before production began, Dame Atkins approached Gemma Arterton, thinking that she'd be right for the role of Vita Sackville-West. Arterton loved the script so much that not only did she leap at the chance, but also recommended her friend Chanya Button for director, having sent her the initial script. Eventually she signed on to the film officially in the role, but also as an executive producer. It'd be fascinating to know whether this film would ever have seen the light of day, and how different it would have been if it had, without Arterton's involvement. Vita takes Virginia back to her ancestral home where the two finally give in to their desires.
We were, as the English like to say, snogging, and it sort of was going on for quite a while. Ages. And then, but, you know, we were having a lovely time anyway. And then sort of Chanya went, cut, and we both looked at the camera like...
Just weeks after the publication of Virginia's novel To the Lighthouse, the two couples meet for the first time as they travel to see the total solar eclipse of June 1927. This event not only signals the decline of Vita and Virginia's romantic relationship, but was also a true impactful moment in their lives. For financial reasons, the film couldn't actually be shot in London. So apart from the Kew Gardens, the majority is filmed in various locations across Dublin and Ireland.
Which is an incredible place to make a film.
Very cold.
Was cold occasionally.
And damp.
Was damp occasionally.
When Vita shows up to an event with Mary Campbell on her arms, this of course causes a great deal of pain to Virginia. But instead of letting that consume her, she redirects it into her writing.
Orlando. Biography.
Orlando is a fictional biography. It follows the adventures of a poet who changes sex from man to woman and lives for centuries, but is inspired very much by the tumultuous family history of Vita Sackville-West, who becomes Virginia's muse while she works on the novel, which includes having actual pictures taken of her which appear in the book. Virginia's writing about Vita is an interesting reversal of their initial relationship. Vita sought out Virginia after becoming fascinated by her writing and deep understanding of human nature. Vita once wrote of her first impression of Virginia, "At first you think she is plain, then a sort of spiritual beauty imposes itself on you, and you find a fascination in watching her." Eventually, Orlando is released into the world and becomes an instant classic, giving Virginia the kind of commercial success that Vita possessed when they had first met. Vita receives her copy of the book and loves it, so she rushes back from Berlin not only to celebrate the success Virginia has found, but to ask her once again to run away together. But unlike before, Virginia accepts, and quickly finds herself packing to leave before the gossip begins to surround them.
But I will ask you to think very carefully about what it is you think is possible with Vita.
I actually think that scene is so interesting when he says, "What do you really want to get out of this?" You know what? I actually feel like it's an incredibly pivotal line, and I don't.
It's one you suggested.
No, it's not.
I remember it. You knew it was.
Really?
Yeah.
There you go.
They flee together to Sissinghurst, but as Vita sleeps, Virginia finds a copy of Orlando with a dedication Vita had wrote to Mary Campbell.
I was given a book, an original copy of Orlando, which Vita had signed to one of her lovers as, like, with Orlando's love.
Vita and Virginia have an honest and open conversation about their relationship to each other, what they want, and how much they truly admire each other, but ultimately agree that the love they feel is damaging to them both, and they should instead remain friends. And so the film ends over footage of the actual castle, the chapel in which Vita was married, and the bed which the two will never again share. Vita and Virginia is a wonderful movie, and a wonderful true story. These were two incredibly talented writers, and that clearly comes through with the script. The majority of the dialogue is of course original, but the film isn't afraid to extract quotes from both artists' works, whether that be the readings of their love letters to each other, selections of Orlando we hear during its development, or just random lines from "To the Lighthouse," "All Passion Spent," "A Room of One's Own," etc., etc. Director Chanya Button brings a sense of grace to the proceedings and does a good job drawing on Gemma and Elizabeth's strengths as actors. She consciously cast the actors about a decade younger than the characters were, and combined this with a contemporary soundtrack as a way of underscoring the freshness of these women's legacies, which were forged between 1922 and 1928. These were two very modern women in a very unmodern time, so placing them in a generic by-the-numbers period piece would have likely been a disservice to who they were. These changes from the expected make the story feel fresh and modern despite its setting. One of the things that I feel works so well with the story is that, despite its subject matter and setting, these characters aren't greatly affected by the social constructs in place which would attempt to hold them back. They're both successful women, and their romantic relationship isn't hampered by society's view of it, purely by themselves.
It's not about the social constraints why they don't work out, I don't think. Vita can't be within one person, or by, she just can't. It went where it went. It moved into something else.
While Arterton and Debicki kill it in front of the camera, behind it you have Button directing, and a script co-written by her and Atkins. Even all the producers are women, so this amount of female talent really helps to bring an authentic feeling to the characters on screen. I think it helps to highlight how much tenderness and genuine kindness and warmth exists between Vita and Virginia, both on screen and in reality, which seems to carry true to Elizabeth and Gemma as well. I'm not a historian. I like movies, but I tried to give as much history and context to the events of the film so that you walk away from this video having learnt something. But I think director Chanya Button summed it up perfectly when she said, "Both of these women were incredibly progressive and forward-thinking, in the art they made, in the lives they led, and in the relationship they had with each other." Next time I'll be looking at another James Bond movie, this time the Roger Moore flick Moonraker. Yep, this is the one that really jumped the gun, involving the return of metal teeth-clad Jaws, a character called Holly Goodhead, and a climax set on a space station. You can find out where to watch it using the link in the description below, for I cover it next week. Oh, and you should go read a Virginia Woolf novel. It's so worth your time. I recommend either To the Lighthouse or Orlando as your first experience. They're both incredible novels. But until next time, I hope you have a beautiful day and an even brighter tomorrow.